and that is always a mess. But it's important to get in here and get all that glue out, get all the fiberglass mess out of here, because these things are molded plastic and they're not perfect. They'll change shape on cooling and in the mold and stuff. It's not a knock against the company, it's just plastic. And these things aren't perfect either. So I noticed the last time I put one of these on my 550, it was raked down just a little bit. And that's not because I was lazy, that's just because of how the design is. But what you want to do is get these things snugged up as far as you can into position. And don't be afraid to use a little persuasion. Once you get it where you like it, I take and just drill a very small pilot hole like I've done in this guy here. As you can already see, I've got my pre-drilled holes. Now we're going to enlarge them with this 11/64 bit. Hold on those extensions with screws. Now, this can go up here and will be held in place. So as you can see, you got the install finished up. This is just the mock-up fitment. I'm going to pull these back off of here and silicone underneath, but I've got some silicone to do later, so I'm just going to do all that process at once. So installing these extensions, you have to remove the old ones, which is really the worst part. You're dealing with the old glue, some heat, some fiberglass, maybe some dust and cutting, and it's really kind of messy. The worst part for anybody to have to do. But then the installation, if you can clean things up and keep them straight, pound with a hammer and drill a hole, these ain't too bad to install. Got the silicone out for the pump, so I'm going to take care of the extensions real quick. Alright, just finished the final touches on this pump. It's ready to go in. Now there's nothing too complicated about this. I've already aligned it and I know I've got a couple shims that are going to go on the back here. When it goes in, Loctite this time and those shims on top, we can torque it in place. I'm going to put a little bead of silicone around here to seal it between the pump and the body, but I don't want too much because I'm going to take it out a couple times this year. And also, it doesn't need a whole lot. This isn't a big gap you're filling up. Plus, just makes it harder the next time you need to take that pump out. Now on a stock system with 3/8 lines or even 2 3/8 lines, I like to put the cooling lines up into the hull first where I can reach them and deal with them a whole lot easier without this pump in the way. Then when this goes in, the fittings are right here where I can reach them, install those lines. A 1/2-inch system though, the line is much larger and real hard to work around to get this pump in place and try to tighten those bolts, so you have to do it last. I've got a camera set up down below, so if you missed anything the first time I said it, just raise your hand and I'll better explain myself the next time. Let's get down there. Alright, let's give this a go. Either I'm ready or I'm not. Off camera, I mask the tunnel here so I don't get a big silicone mess. I just hate dealing with that, and I can keep it confined. Here's my water line in, and this is the bilge line. I like to start with the chunk of hose already on there, and this has already been aimed and bent to fit, so it'll slide right on the nozzle, and then this will be saved for last. I'm going to get my impeller on here real quick. Also off camera, I've masked off the inside of the pump too to minimize the spread of silicone around that thing too. So let's get the impeller on and then start sliding the pump in. A task to delegate for future Ryan is PJS pumps are set back a 1/2 inch, so I'm going to need to come up with a spacer that fits here. I've got the dimensions I need. Nothing exists off the shelf, so I'll have to find something. Okay. Pump next. Alright, perfect world when you do it right, and this is all aligned. These two just automatically slide together. There we go. Bolts lined up. This one's already got some sauce on it. These back two tabs get the alignment shims, which go right here. Alright, next water line. Now
I personally think the 1/2-inch water line is easier to deal with, so I don't mind installing it last. But on a 3/8 line, for some reason, it seems much more to monkey with to me, and it's just fiddly. So I'd rather start with the 3/8 lines already installed on these fittings. There's usually one here and one over here. Start with those lines already on here. They'll droop out and then dangle in your face as you're installing all of this. The 1/2-inch, a whole lot easier to manhandle. So let's just slide it on up into place like so. Now I want my screw head on that hose clamp to be on this side so I can reach it with a screwdriver. There we go. And then on this fitting here, you have to consider how much larger this outlet is and this hose is, and how much closer it's going to be to the ride plate. So you want your hose clamp out of the way as well. There it is. I'm just going to tidy up the silicone in there. Put on a ride plate and intake grate next. There it is, all wrapped up. And I like to use stainless button screws. They protrude the least. They offer a low profile and it's smooth, doesn't snag on anything. The best hydrodynamic option. Plus you can get in here with a socket or a tool. And there we go. I've got one washer under the back tab. Pull the plate down a little bit. Not sure this camera angle is going to show it, but the plane of this hull, I haven't measured the angle of this piece here. The ride plate sits between the two as viewed by eye.
So right now, while this engine's apart, is a great time to just peek around in there and see all the little things I did with the porting. So I'm going to move this thing around and hopefully show you all the angles that you need to see in order to understand what's going on. So let's start with the path of airflow. We're going to just start on the intake ports here. This is a straightened and opened up intake port, but I actually didn't change the intake timing at all, which means I just squared it off. So this was rounded more of a football shape like this in a stock cylinder. I cut that bad boy flat across, so when the piston skirt passes it, as much of the port is open as possible. I like to reshape this divider from stock, but I didn't take out too much more material than stock. It's about this size, but it's just kind of domey originally, so I knife edged it. It's blunt, and then ran her back. Again, more of a straight angle, but none of this timing has changed. And in fact, at 180-degree cylinder timing, this is fully open, so there's no need to open this dimension anyway. And I also didn't widen it in this direction because I didn't want any piston rocking in here, because I knew I was going to have a very wide exhaust port. The finish I went with is what's considered a burr finish, and it's what's popular right now in the cylinder head porting world. What's really kind of traditional is anywhere between like a 60 and 120 grit sandpaper, and the burr finish is a replicant of like a 30-ish to 40 grit sandpaper. And I didn't want such sharp edges, at least on the cast iron, so I just went back in with hand and buffed with red Scotch-Brite just to take off the high spots. So it's still a burr finish, but it's a little bit smoothed out. There's another look kind of closer up at that burr finish. Again, it's rough, but then I've smoothed it. Here's what the same finish looks like in bare aluminum, and in this one I chose not to polish it because I did want the rough surface finish inside the manifold. So that's what a burr finish looks like on bare aluminum. Moving on from the airflow path, after it comes out of the intake port, it enters the crankcase and then is compressed by the pistons and shoved up these transfer ports where it enters the cylinder through the upper transfers. So let's start with the lower transfers, and then we'll move up to the upper transfers. What you do on a 440 and 550 is you raise up this section of cylinder wall so you open up the surface area
of this portion of the port. An ideally designed transfer port is going to be wide on the entrance and then taper all the way down to where it enters the cylinder. So as much as possible you want that. So the goal here is just to get this mouth as wide as you can get with as much surface area as possible. So in order to achieve that, I took material out of here all the way up to this bolt guide, or this bolt boss right here, and straightened it out, and then brought it back this wall as far back as it would go, and then same with this divider. It knife edged here and then thinned as much as possible, and I gave the cylinder wall the same treatment. It's sort of beveled and rounds up into the transfer port. These ports feature a burr finish all the way through, from the opening all the way down to the end of the cylinder. Just another angle where you can see that this mouth has been opened up, knife edged, the burr finish all the way through. I'm not sure you can tell the angle, but again, everything's wide right here and then tapers up towards the opening in the cylinder. There's a look at the upper transfers and their surface finish, burr finished all throughout. These are not retimed, although ever so slightly, because I re-angled them. Kawasaki has these coming in at a 90-degree angle, and I will not reveal what angle mine shoot in at. The width is the same, however, and the timing has not been changed enough to really speak of. And finally, after combustion, gases leave through the exhaust port. And exhaust port timing really makes a big difference on how a two-stroke operates, what RPM range it's most efficient in, and how that engine is going to behave. And I didn't want to change it a whole lot, so that's actually a stock exhaust port timing up to here. This dimensioned exhaust port height is exactly the same as stock. I did straighten it out across the top, dimension I don't need to reveal. It's flat, and then this tapers down like the Honda NSR port that I'll show here on screen. And then I call this like my butterfly edge. So I get the flatness I want here, and I get the width I want here, and I draw this angle here based on what I calculate I need this width to be, and then total port width to be. These angles will just connect. This is a half-inch radius, I believe, and it flows all the way out. And you can see, because I'm a meticulous spender of time on these things, I polish that thing out to a mere finish. Now the final count on porting hours on this thing, 30 hours. At a rate of $100 an hour, I would charge a customer $3,000 to port their cylinder identically to this one. So let's throw it on my $70 jet ski. Well, there you have it. That was everything from back in May. It's now September. Let me catch you up. What's happened? Got the ski together and it's been running. Took it out to Bartlett and Havasu. Things weren't just running that right. I'm suspecting it could have been that aluminum flywheel I got in there, so I've already removed that and need to make another trip to take care of its jetting. But this thing's been tucked away in the corner of my garage now for about 2 months because of all these other projects I took on. So anyway, I'm going to dig this thing back out. You're going to see it coming up in the video here for my yearly September river trip, and hopefully we're out ripping in Parker on that thing. Anyway, I appreciate everybody watching, and I'll just see everyone later. Bye-bye.